Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Obsessive Compulsive Gaming. I am the Obsessive Compulsive Gamer, and this is why I love Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles. So dear viewer, if you don't mind, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this video. So dear viewers, RE The Dark Side Chronicles originally released all the way back in 2009. A year I remember fondly as the year I played a hell of a lot of video games. But for all of you PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 fanboys and fangirls out there, do not despair, for the game was remastered and released for those consoles in 2012. And you're probably thinking to yourself, oh CG, you oh so talented chap, who likes to occasionally dress up as Leon S. Kennedy and dance around the parlor to the soundtrack for Resident Evil 2. What the hell is this game? And I'm so glad you asked, dear viewer. This is an on-rails light gun shooter video game thingamajig that both remakes the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica, and also acts as a prequel of sorts to Resident Evil 4. And as I've already said, dear viewers, I absolutely adore this game. So let me tell you why, the only way I know how, badly. And let's start with how this game manages to act as a kind of, sort of remake of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica. In fact, the way that it chooses to deliver the narrative for Resident Evil 2 in particular, most notably in how it has Claire and Leon working together, as well as telling the entirety of Resident Evil 2 without the need for an additional scenario, is absolutely fabulous, and presents scenarios not present in the can't speak today, and presents scenarios not present in the original Resident Evil 2, like how awkward Claire is with Ada Wong, Leon meeting Sherry Birkin, something that he only did in the last 2 minutes of the original. I honestly cannot speak today. Something he only did in the last 2 minutes of the original Resident Evil 2. The encounters with Mr. X, how they managed to drop him into the lava, thus transforming him into a tyrant of sorts. In fact, I would go so far to say that the way they adapt the story for Resident Evil 2 and manage to have Leon and Claire present for the whole thing is actually more effective than even the way the Resident Evil 2 remake chooses to tell the story. Because let's face it, dear viewers, the way they handle the 2 separate playthroughs in the Resident Evil 2 remake is pretty disappointing. Claire's scenario, apart from featuring Sherry and of course Chief Irons, and the orphanage location, is pretty much exactly the same as Leon's campaign, which absolutely would not be the case if Claire and Leon were off doing their own things. They should have 2 completely different campaigns. So Dark Side Chronicles manages to simplify the story and tell it, in my humble opinion, in a very effective way. So much so that if anyone got the bright idea to make an actual Resident Evil 2 movie, and I suppose Welcome to Raccoon City kind of does that, well, they should have just played through the Resident Evil 2 section in The Dark Side Chronicles, and that would give you an absolute perfect blueprint for how to do a movie based on Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil Code Veronica's story has also been similarly streamlined and told in a far more effective way than in the original game. I'm not the biggest fan of Code Veronica, I personally find it to be a little bit overlong, too much backtracking, but the way Resident Evil Code Veronica is presented here makes it actually a far superior game than the original Resident Evil Code Veronica. Who knew? And of course, in both of these sections, you'll be able to take control of characters like Leon, Claire again, Steve Burnside, and then later in the Code Veronica playthrough, you can even play as Chris Redfield. I also absolutely adore the graphics for this particular game. Of course, Resident Evil 2 at that time and Resident Evil Code Veronica were pretty out of date. And particularly Resident Evil 2 still looked like PS1 garbage. But Dark Side Chronicles takes both of those games, updates the graphics, for 2009 anyway, and I still think they look damn good. They also did an amazing job updating the soundtracks for those two games as well. And in fact, I might prefer the updated soundtrack for the Resident Evil 2 section here more than I do for the updated soundtrack in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Go figure! And of course, this game has the wonderful light gun gameplay goodiness that you would find in House of the Dead or even Resident Evil The Umbrella Chronicles. And of course, you can collect weapons, find hidden collectibles in the environment, upgrade the weapons, find files, all of that good shit. And best of all, you can play this game in co-op. That's right, dear viewers, you can play this game with a friend. If you have any friends, that is. Sadly, the only friend I have is Bertram, and the way that he rests his controller on his crotch when he's not playing in the game just disturbs me in ways I can't even begin to go into here, dear viewers. So I don't choose to play with him very often. Only usually if I'm incredibly drunk or have hit my head particularly hard. Now we can talk about the actual Resident Evil 4 prequel that we get here. That's right, a whole extra scenario which kind of works as the main plot of this game, with Leon retelling the events of Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil Code Veronica to Jack Krauser. That's right, that's Jack Krauser, one of the bad guys from Resident Evil 4. And in this game, we essentially follow them as they try to uncover the mysteries behind the T-Virus. A deadly virus, of course, developed by the Umbrella Corporation. I say T-Virus, but it might kind of, sort of be the Veronica virus. Maybe. You'll just have to play the game for yourself to find that out. So we get an entire campaign with an original story here. And it's just as good as the Resident Evil 2 and Code Veronica sections of the game. And if you've ever been curious about the backstory of Krauser, Leon, how they met, maybe what made Krauser go bad, well, this is definitely the game for you. Also, if you've been wanting to play a remake of Resident Evil 2 that predates the actual Resident Evil 2 remake, and might just actually tell the story and combine the characters and the scenarios in a way that I think is actually better than the Resident Evil 2 remake managed to do it, again, this is the game for you. If you want to play a better version of Resident Evil Code Veronica, again, this is the game for you. Are you seeing a pattern here, dear viewers? Also, if you consider yourself to be a Resident Evil fan and somehow you haven't played this game, well, seek it out at your earliest convenience. You will not regret it. Like I said, I absolutely love this game. And I love on-rail shooters. There's a distinct lack of them nowadays. We need to bring that genre back post-haste. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Just a little insight into why I love Resident Evil The Dark Side Chronicles. If you enjoyed this little video of mine, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you haven't enjoyed it, well then feel free to give me a thumbs down. But please remember the single most important thing I always tell you, dear viewer, and that is to always stay obsessed with gaming. Are you still here? Oh, you must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise, you're a booby pants, and no one wants to be a booby pants.